Good evening, all.
Good evening, ma'am.
Shall we start our class? Five of you have joined till now. So let's start our class. In our last class, we discussed what is counseling, definition of counseling, what is guidance, difference between counseling and guidance, then what is counseling and what is psychotherapy. Then next we discussed hallmark of a counselor, what are the characteristics a counselor should have. Uh, Along with that, we discussed his educational qualification, the license procedure, or what license he should have to be a professional counselor. And under that, we discussed what is RCI, how to get RCI accreditation or RCI certification to be a practicing counselor. Then next we discussed what is the process of counseling. Under that we discussed how to develop a relationship, how to work in a relationship, and terminating the counseling relationship. And then next we discussed what are the factors that influence the counseling process. Am I audible to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
So while discussing the steps or stages in counseling, mm, we discussed these things: developing a relationship, working in a relationship, and terminating the relationship. How to develop or how to uh, create the bond or trust in our client. And under that we discuss predictability, consistency, testing, establish confidentiality. Then next is goal setting, and what are the necessary conditions for successful counseling. These are the necessary conditions. Then working in counseling relationship during the process of the, or in the next stage, once the trust is developed or the relationship has been established between the client and the counselor, what to do in the next stage. So the role of the counselor here is to change the perception of the client, take a leading role, the show accurate empathy. Accurate empathy involves empathetic rapport and communicative attunement. There are also two types of empathy: primary empathy, advanced empathy. And the counselor should also self disclose himself or herself. The counselor should show positive regard. The responding, what should be the responding style of the counselor, how the counselor should show immediacy, how to use humor, how to use confrontation, what is transference and counter transference in a counseling relationship. Then comes the next stage or the third stage, where the relationship comes to an end. That is called the stage of terminating a counseling relationship. How to terminate it, and what are the problems or issues faced during the termination, and what other steps the counselor can take at the time of termination. Then what are the factors that influence counseling relationship or the counseling process. First is the structure is about how the counseling process will be carried out. What is the structure of the whole process, starting from identification or starting from taking the background information of the client up to the termination process. The counselor should uh, follow a particular structure, and better the structure, more clearer the structure, better will be the counseling outcome or success rate of the counseling sessions. The next is initiative. That is the initiative, or this initiative is shown by the client. uh, that means motivated, or the client's motivation to bring about change in his or her behavior. And the initiative also influences the success rate of the counseling. Under that we discuss reluctant resistant client and how to deal with them. Then next is the setting or the physical environment of the counseling room, the sitting style, the sitting pattern, the design of the room, etc. Along with that, how the counselor should show this his non-verbal behavior, that was discussed under this term or under the acronym of solar. Then next is the client's quality. What are the client's quality? Which type of client is preferred and which type of client is avoided? Then counselor's quality, and I think that was the end of this chapter. Then under unit 3 we will be discussing theoretical approaches to counseling. Under theoretical approaches to counseling, we will discuss psychoanalytic and Alderian approach, then person-centered, existential and gestalt approach, and rational emotive therapy, transactional approach, analysis. Then last one is behavioral approach, reality therapy. All these things will not be discussing in this class. So, what is psychoanalytic or Alderian approach? So this approach, psychoanalytic, as you are students of psychology, you must have studied about the psychoanalytic school of psychology. This is one of the, or this school was being developed, I mean this approach, I am using the term school because there are different schools of psychology or different approaches of studying psychology or different viewpoints of studying psychology. Among all the approaches, psychoanalytic is the approach which makes psychology a distinct discipline, or this branch has contributed a lot to the field of psychology, and this psychoanalytic approach was developed by Sigmund Freud and in 1990s. And Sigmund Freud says that the behavior we show or the activities we show is greatly influenced by our unconscious mind. And while discussing this, he explained there are three levels of mind: conscious, subconscious, unconscious. Sunicha pilamane ei jinsata? How many students are there? How many learners are there now? 7 learners are there. Okay, Sumitra Parida, do you have any idea about psychoanalysis, Freud's theory? This psychoanalytic theory has been is the contribution of Sigmund Freud. Further, some people also added to the existing theory of psychoanalysis, that is known as psychodynamic theory. They were called the Neo-Freudians. Freud has developed this, or he is the person who developed psychoanalytic theory, but later on some neo-Freudians like Jung, Adler, these Sullivan, these are the person who are the neo-Freudians. They accepted some of the views or some of the theories of Freud, and they added something new to the concept of psychoanalysis, that was known as psychodynamic theory, or that is the develop. किए सब पिलामाने जानिଛ साइको एनालिटिक थ्योरी बा फ्रॉइड को विषय रे? 7-8 जन अछ, जने दि जन एटलिस्ट यू मस्ट बी नोइंग समथिंग अबाउट साइको एनालिसिस. कौन किसी आइडिया नहीं? That was there in the introductory portion of your psychology. In the first paper, you must have studied about this psychoanalytic school or psychoanalytic approach of psychology. So, Freud says that our behavior is guided by our unconscious mind, and the things we know about ourselves is called conscious, and some of the information, some of the facts that are there in our subconscious, which can be brought to the conscious or to the surface level with a little effort by us. But the most of the information, most of the facts, most of the desires, maximum of the things are there in our unconscious mind. So what we know about ourselves is just 1/10 of the total psyche. We suppose we divide our whole mind or whole psyche into 10 persons, we only know one person out of that 10 person, that is called a tip of an iceberg. So whatever we know about ourselves is too insufficient to explain our behavior. Most of our behavior is guided by our unconscious. So what is there in the unconscious? Unconscious, in our unconscious, there are as here it is written, deep rooted thoughts that are often stem from childhood. These are there in the unconscious, and psychoanalysts, they use different techniques to bring those things to the surface. So we to describe this, he gave this division of ego and superego. These are the aspects of personality, or these are the three parts of the personality. One is another ego, and superego. And ego is the id is usually directed, it is guided by our primitive desires, or the desires that are not acceptable to the society. It includes desire about aggression, irrational impulses, unacceptable impulses, sex impulses. All these things are there in the id. And ego is a balancing factor between id and superego. Superego is the third concept, which can be equal to a judge, and it is always ruled by the moral principle. What is good, what we should do, what should be done. This it follows a code of conduct, and it differentiates between what is right and wrong, and always guides us to do the right, or the ethical, or the lawful thing that is accepted by the society. And id is purely childish. it is uh, it is ruled by pleasure principle. Whatever gives us pleasure, id wants all those things. Suppose I want to uh, write my answer by copying it from my friend who is sitting next to me in the exam, but the society doesn't allow. Our rules regulations never allow us to copy the answer in an examination hall. It guides us to do all those things. Superego says not to do all those things, whereas ego maintains a balance between these two. So it is written, this ego is analogous to a traffic policeman, and it is ruled by reality principle, whereas id is ruled by pleasure principle, ego is ruled by reality principle. So ego's job is to make a balance between the id desires, while taking into consideration the reality of the situation. So it's called the executive of an individual's personality, and it is responsible for our higher cognitive and intellectual thoughtful functions and reasoning and all these things. So we use ego defense mechanism sometimes. We use ego defense mechanism to maintain a balance within us, and these mechanisms are normal behavior which operate on an unconscious level, and it help us to deny or distort the reality. They help us to cope up with the anxiety and prevents the ego from being overwhelmed when we are in a imbalanced state, when we are actually, we cannot cope with a situation, or we are faced by any type of anxiety, stress. We use this defense mechanism to maintain a balance, or maintain the normalcy, not to be anxious, not to be get overwhelmed by all those things. Are you listening to me?
Yes, ma'am.
So these are the ego defense mechanism. These are the mechanisms that we unconsciously use. Once you learn about, kehi janicha pile what is defense mechanism? Any idea about defense mechanism? ହଁ ନା ନାହିଁ କିଛି ବି ତ କୁହ।
No, ma'am.
No idea. ଅନ୍ୟମାନେ ଜାଣିଛନ୍ତି ବୋଧେ?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
No. डिफेन्स मेकानिजम कौन किसी भी आइडिया नहीं। ओके ठीक अच्छे। तम क्लास रे तम टीचर बहुत जोरे गाली देले सब पिला आगे यू गेट ह्यूमिलिएटेड एंड you try to console yourself or you want to cope with the situation, what you do ए सिचुएशन में तुम कौन कर? क्लास रे टीचर बहुत जोरे गाली दौरान तुमको सब पिला बस गाली दौरान तुम कौन कर? जो 10 जन अच्छा योर रिएक्शन विल बी डिफरेंट। कौन कौन कर?
साइलेंटली चुपचाप बस मिस्टेक टा हमर कोथि पे गाली करछन सेटा को सुनी कि देन ताको ठीक करबा पे ट्राई करू।
किसी तमर भूल नहीं गोटे अଯଥାରେ टीचर गाली देले कौन करिवो?
अवॉइड
निजे
करना है
डिफेंस रे
रहमा तमाम
कर
से।
अवॉइड करिवो। हां जाने कहलानी अवॉइड करिवो। आ
निजे डिफेंस रे किछि कहबो
तो एक्सप्लेनेशन किछि दबो। आ अन्य और किछि नहीं। तुमको गोटे केबीसी रे तुमको जीवा पई कि बहुत इच्छा थिला, यू हैव ट्राइड अ लॉट बट यू आर नॉट बीइंग सिलेक्टेड फॉर द केबीसी और यू अपीयर्ड द ओपीएससी एग्जाम, यू फेल्ड इन द एग्जाम और यू कुड नॉट क्वालिफाई द एग्जाम। तुम कौन यूजुअली कुह कुह शीघ्र शीघ्र आगु को जीवा एठी मते लटकी जीवा। हम्म
फास्ट को क्वेश्चन हार्ड आसला।
भाग्य खराब कइछ।
हम्म क्वेश्चन बहुत डिफिकल्ट आसथिला
क्वेश्चन
कुह। हां
डिफिकल्ट
हां
आसला।
लक नहीं कहबू मैं।
लक नहीं कहला।
लक
आउ
लक फेवर करतानी।
मोर मोर भाग्य रे नहीं। हां तापरे
भाग्य
फटाफट को पिलाटी।
प्रिपरेशन में कोई मिसिंग होगा।
प्रिपरेशन बेटर नथिबो।
हम्म
प्रिपरेशन ठीक नहीं होगा
प्रिपरेशन भी
हमारा।
नहीं नहीं प्रिपरेशन ठीक है नहीं बोल तुम कहबो की
यस
कहबो
मैम।
कहबो। हां
यस मैम, बिकॉज अगर हम लोग को नहीं मिला है, हम लोग उसमें आगे नहीं बढ़ पा रहे हैं, तो शायद हम लोग कुछ प्रिपरेशन कम किए होंगे इसलिए।
गुड। आउ आउ कौन कहबो रे पिले? कौन यूजुअली कहूछ कुह? तम सांग पाइगला जे भल पढ़ेनी जम्मा भी तमे पाइन, से भल न पढ़ी प्रिपेयर से कर देला बोली पाइगला बोली कहबो?
क्वेश्चन कवर करने पे टाइम पाइलानी।
ता टाइम मिललानी। हां मु देखुची समस्त कहिबार सीए परा पैसा दे देइछि, पैसा दे देकी पाई जाइछि। एटा पूरा पैसा दिया कारबार उडा सब होउछि। मो तो जानिनी काको पैसा देबा पई, मो बापांकर तो एते पैसा नै, मु कोठी देबी। सेति मु चाकरीटा पाइलेनी। क्लास रे भल मार्क पाइगला परे कौन ना सी परा सब बेले मैडम को पछरे पछरे बुलु थाए आउ मैडम को पूरा तेलेकी रखछि भल भल कथा कहि कि सेति ताकू भल मार्क मिल जाउछि। मते एते सब तेला तेली आसीबनी। दीज आर द statements we usually use to console ourselves or cope with the trauma of getting less mark or not being qualified for a particular job or particular in a particular entrance examination। जोटा मु तुमको कहली क्लास रे टीचर गाली देला माने गाली क देई चाली जती, you know that you have not done anything wrong but teacher is going on scolding you, she is not putting a break to her गाड़ी एंड ऑल दिस थिंग्स। तो से समय कौन लागुच तुम कांदीबा पई कि कहि कि आरंभ करूछ। And if I am asking you the question, how you felt when your teacher scolded you, you cannot recall those things also. You have put them under pressure. You have tried to push them into your unconscious. You have tried to forget them. These are all the defense mechanism we usually use to maintain peace, to get calm, to be in a comfortable position, to protect ourselves from anxiety, distress, and all these things. So one of the defense mechanism is repressal, where repressal means withdrawal of unwanted idea and affect or desire from the consciousness by pushing it down or repressing it into our unconscious mind. Similarly, reaction formation, it is the fixation of an idea, affect, or desire in conscious that is opposite to the feared unconscious impulse. ମୁଁ ଯୌତୁକ ନେବା ପାଇଁ କି ବହୁତ ଇଣ୍ଟରେଷ୍ଟେଡ। ମୋ ପୁଅ ବାହାଘରକୁ ମୁଁ ମାନେ ବହୁତ ଭଲ ଯୌତୁକ ଧରିକି ଆସିଛି ମୋ ବୋହୂ ଘରୁ। ବଟ୍ ଆଇ ୱିଲ୍ ସେ ଦ୍ୟାଟ୍ I am never I never like a ଯୌତୁକ, all these things. These are all things to humiliate parents of girls. ଏତେ ସୋସିଆଲ ସବୁ ଖରାପ ଖରାପ ଜିନିଷ ସବୁ ଅଛି। ଲୋକମାନେ କେମିତି ଯୌତୁକ ନଉଛନ୍ତି, ଲୋକମାନେ କେମିତି ଇଏ କରୁଛନ୍ତି। ସପୋଜ ଆଇ ଟେକ୍ ବ୍ରାଇବ୍, whenever it is possible I'll take bribe. So when there is a discussion about bribe, ମୁଁ କଣ କହିବି, ଲୋକମାନେ ଓହୋ କେମିତି ଲୋକମାନେ bribe ନଉଛନ୍ତି, ତାଙ୍କର କଣ ହବ, ତାଙ୍କର ଭଗବାନ ଦେଖୁଛନ୍ତି, and all these things we usually say. ମୁଁ ଏଇଟା ଏକ୍ସାମ୍ପଲ ଖାଲି ଦେଲି bribe ର କଥା ନେଇକି। in every step of our life, if we are committing any mistake, bribe ତ ବହୁତ ବଡ ଜିନିଷ ହେଇଗଲାଣି। ଆମେ ଛୋଟ ଜିନିଷରେ ବି whenever we face such situation, we exactly say or exactly show that I have a opposite view or my value is different from that. That is known as reaction formation. Projection, it is a form of defense in which unwanted feelings are displaced onto another. ମୁଁ ଠକ ହେଇଥିବି, ମୁଁ କହିବି ସିଏ ପରା, ସିଏ ବହୁତ ଠକ ନା, ଆଉ ସିଏ, ମୁଁ ପରୀକ୍ଷାରେ କପି କରିକି ଲେଖିଦେଲି, ମୁଁ କହିବି ମୁଁ ଦେଖିଛି ସିଏ କପି କରିକି ଲେଖୁଥିଲା। So we are projecting our bad deeds or id guided deeds to somebody else, and that in this way we try to maintain our balance. We prevent our ego from being overwhelmed. Then regression, confronted by a stressful situation, we sometimes abandon coping strategy and revert a pattern or behavior used earlier in the development. ଯେତେବେଳେ ଆମେ ଦେଖିଲେ ଟିଚର ଗାଳି କରି ଚାଲିଛନ୍ତି, she is not stopping, she is going on scolding us left and right, ସେତେବେଳକୁ ଆମେ କଣ କରୁଛନ୍ତି, ଆମକୁ ଆଉ we lose our control and we start crying. We show a behavior that is that we used to show in our earlier developmental stages. ଛୋଟ ଛୁଆ ହେଇଥିଲା ବେଳେ କଣ କରୁଥିଲେ, ଟିକେ କିଏ କଣ କହିଲା ମାନେ କାନ୍ଦ ଆରମ୍ଭ କରିଦଉଥିଲେ। So this is known as regression. ଆମେ କାନ୍ଦି ଦେବା ଦ୍ୱାରା ଆମେ କହୁଛନ୍ତି ଓ କାନ୍ଦି ଦେଲା ପରେ ମତେ ହାଲକା ଲାଗିଲା। The next one is sublimation. It is the diversion or deflection of intellectual, usually sexual ones, into non-instinctual one. It allows us to act out unacceptable impulses by converting this behavior into a more acceptable form. ମତେ ଗୋଟେ ବହୁତ ଜୋରରେ ରାଗ ଲାଗୁଛି, କାହାକୁ ଗୋଟେ ପିଟା ପିଟି କରିବା ପାଇଁ ହିଁ ମନ ହଉଛି। So I will start working in a gym. ଗୋଟେ acceptable way ରେ I will release my pent up energy, release my frustration. ମତେ ଯୋଉ ମନ ହଉଛି କାହାକୁ ଛେଚେଇଥାନ୍ତି ବା କାହାକୁ ବାଡେଇଥାନ୍ତି, I can do it through exercise. I can run fast and release my, so this way this is known as sublimation. ମୋର सोसाइटी ପାଇଁ କି ବିଭିନ୍ନ ପ୍ରକାର କ୍ରିଟିକାଲ, ମୁଁ सोसाइटी ଏୟା ହେଉଛି ବୋଲି ମୁଁ କ୍ରିଟିସିଜମ କରୁଛି, ସେଇଟାକୁ ମୁଁ ଏମିତି ଭାଷାରେ ନ କହିକି I can be a cartoonist and express my feelings in a more acceptable way. ଯୋଉଗୁଡାକ ଆମେ କହୁଛନ୍ତି ଗୋଟେ खराब जिनसटाको बहुत सुंदर वे रे प्रेजेंट करबा इज सब्लिमेशन डिनाइल जोटा तमने कहूच ना ना रिजल्ट बाहरला बेलू मोर नंबरटा नाही मु काई क्वालिफाई करनी से गोटे कौन प्रिंटिंग मिस्टेक है से गोटे एमती देखा मोर नंबर देखा मु निश्चय क्वालिफाई मु तो एत भल करी कहीं देखा जीवनी दिस कैन ऑल्सो बी अनदर फॉर्म ऑफ डिफेन्स मेकानिजम राशनलाइजेशन जदि मते मिलिला नाही मु कहिबी ओहो से चाकरी कौन से चाकरी किसी लाभ ना से गुड़ारे ये सब एत असुविधा अच्छी मोर किए जाऊँगी से चाकरी करी मु परा से कॉलेज रे मते भल होइछि मिलिनी मु एबे घर छाड़ी जाइकी मते बाणी बिहार रही पाठ पढ़िया पड़ता किए जाइथा घर द्वार छाड़ी भल होइछि मु बाणी बिहार मते सीट मिलिनी मु मोर डिस्टेंस रे कौन डिस्टेंस रे कौन साइकोलॉजी इग्नोर रे साइकोलॉजी पढ़िया रे कौन वैल्यू नहीं कि तार भी वैल्यू अछि मु एबे पाइथिले जाइथांती कोठी हॉस्टल रहिथांती कोठी मेस रे रहिथांती की हैरान सो वी rationalize our failure we rationalize the faults we do एटा को आमे कहि परिबा अंगुर खोले कोली खटा द डिस्प्लेसमेंट मोर राग हैला मोर बॉस उपरे मोर राग हैला मोर सासू उपरे आई विल स्टार्ट स्कोल्डिंग बीटिंग माय चिल्ड्रन मो ऑफिस रु रागी के आसली मो बॉस उपरे एंड व्हाट आई विल डू मो घरे मो वाइफ उपरे मु मोर विभिन्न प्रकार राग सुझेबी दैट इज नोन एज डिस्प्लेसमेंट एंड इंटेलेक्चुअलाइजेशन avoid thinking about the stressful emotional aspect of the situation instead focus only on intellectual component तम भितर किछि जन कहिला नाही my preparation was not enough nahi I am not able to qualify this I might not be fit for this job I should try some other job jota kahila that is known as intellectualization so these are the defense mechanism we usually use so as given by this psychoanalytic theory so this theory what is the role of a counselor as per the psychoanalytic theory so they encourage the client to talk as psychoanalysis believes that the behavior we show whether it is normal or abnormal मन देकी सुनो पिला माने the behavior we show is guided by the unconscious thing that is repressed in our unconscious store or by the ideas things anything that is there in the unconscious that guides our behavior whether the behavior is normal or abnormal whether the behavior is adaptive or non-adaptive or maladaptive behavior whether it is a normal behavior or whether it is a mental disorder everything is because of the unconscious infantile id desires that are there in our unconscious mind while during our developmental stages through our experience with the environment various things or we get anxious we feel guilt we feel harassed we feel shame and that is repressed in our unconscious and when it doesn't or when it is not dealt with properly जो infantile or shameful things that are there in the unconscious if these are not addressed these are not dealt with properly that is reflected or that is expressed in form of this maladaptive behavior abnormal behavior or in a severe form that is reflected as mental disorder ବୋଲି କହିକି ଏଇ ମାନେ କହିଲେ ମାନେ फ्रॉइड एगुड़ाक सब कही तो फ्रॉइड कहते अकॉर्डिंग टू साइकोएनालिटिक थियोरी what is the role of a counselor so the role because he says that everything is there in our unconscious and that are because of our childhood memory jo memory gudako we have suppressed that is we have already forgotten so the counselor role hochi to bring those childhood memories to the surface how to bring them there are different techniques to bring them to the surface and से सब को जो उलझा हुआ जो डिफिकल्ट कॉम्प्लिकेटेड है कि कंफ्यूज्ड स्टेट रे से सब जिंस को आमे ताकू केबे भी कौन कुआ जो एड्रेस करिनु ताकू केबे आमे सुलझेइनु से गुडा को सब कॉन्शियस को आनी कि आमे जदी सुलझेइ दबा देन we will be free from that mental disorder. अच्छा तमे माने जो देखी जो कौन पिले को फिल्म को तो अवनी वाली कौन फिल्म टा से फिल्म टा हरे राम हरे कृष्ण गीत अच्छी से फिल्म टा कौन होची नाटा को तो
नो आइडिया मैम
फिल्म कौन देखी ना से गोटे फिल्म टा एबे जोड़ा तार थर्ड वर्जन आसिला अक्षय कुमार अच्छी से
मैम भूल भुलैया
भूल भुलैया फर्स्ट भूल भुलैया मने अच्छी
यस मैम
समस्तंकर
Yes, ma'am.
हाँ फर्स्ट भूल भुलैया रे लास्ट को कौन होची Akshay Kumar is a psychologist in that film. He realizes that something is there in the unconscious mind of the heroine. Se heroine no na kona avni na kon heichi. सी ट्राए करुची जे ताकू सरफेस को आनिबो ऑन द डे ऑफ दुर्गाष्टमी एंड तार जो ताकू सप्रेस करिकी तार कहा पई कि जो राग रखिछि जे माने केते पूर्व पूर्व जन्मर से सब जो राग अछि ता मन भितरे ताकू रिजर्व करिया पई कि द साइकोलॉजिस्ट और द साइकेट्रिस्ट whoever is there in the film Akshay Kumar he tries to resolve the inner conflict of this heroine by bringing it back to the consciousness सी तो जानी हिरोइन टा जे मु ही या सब करूची अनकॉन्शियसली सी इज डूइंग ऑल दिस थिंग्स सेति पई कि सी सब सीन क्रिएट करची जोथिरे कि दुर्गाष्टमी दिन तार से अनकॉन्शियस माइंड रे जो राग अछि जो फ्रस्ट्रेशन अछि जो एग्रेशन अछि जो कॉन्फ्लिक्ट अछि he tries to bring it to the surface to the consciousness एंड सेमितिया गोटे लोकटे को तैयारी करा होची जहा ऊपर ता लाग होची और से ताको हानी दबो बा मारी दबो बा कोन कटा छटा कोन करूची सेते आमे जहा देखि छथि फिल्म एंड दिस इज व्हाट द काउंसलर एक्चुअली डज इन केस ऑफ साइकोथेरापी कटा छटा मरा मरी कथा नुह सेटा फिल्म रे देखैछि सेया किंतु द काउंसलर एक्चुअली मेक्स द क्लाइंट comfortable and helps him to bring the unconscious or the childhood memories to the surface. Once the client says about the conflicting childhood memories, the counselor tries to resolve these unresolved past experiences that is being explained by the client. Client जो गुड़ाक कहूची तार जो frustration तार जो कष्ट पेन he is having during his childhood experiences से सबू को काउंसलर ताकू बुझा सुधा करिकी से गुडा को भुलेई देबा पई कि से गुडा को सॉल्व कर देबा पई कि चेष्टा करूची सो दिस इज द रोल ऑफ द काउंसलर अकॉर्डिंग टू साइकोएनालिटिक theory. So what coming to the goal, the primary goal is to help the client become more aware of the unconscious aspect of his or her personality, which includes repressed memories and painful wishes. And the second goal is to help the client work through a developmental stage not resolved in the primary goal. अच्छा मु तमन को कहली द कौन स्ट्रक्चर ऑफ पर्सनालिटी रे ईड इगो सुपर इगो कहिदेली स्ट्रक्चर ऑफ माइंड रे तुमको कॉन्शियस अनकॉन्शियस सबकॉन्शियस कहली आउ गोटे थ्योरी अछि फ्रॉइड करो दैट इज साइकोसेक्सुअल डेवलपमेंट आ से साइकोसेक्सुअल डेवलपमेंट रे फ्रॉइड कहउचंती डिफरेंट स्टेजेस ऑफ डेवलपमेंट आ एवरी देयर शुड बी ए smooth transition from one stage to another stage in the stages of psychosexual development. जदि कोनोसी स्टेज रे फिक्सेशन हे गला बा कोनोसी स्टेज रे सी बैक चली गला that is reflected in the personality in his or her later life and that shows maladaptive behavior in the person or that is responsible for showing maladaptive behavior by the person. ତ ସେଇଥିରୁ ସେ କହିବା କଥା ତ the client should know about his unconscious memories and painful wishes, but at the same time he should be encouraged, he should be helped to resolve those conflict and transit to a higher level of development ବୋଲି କହିକି ସିଏ କହୁଛନ୍ତି. So what are the techniques that is being used by a ଏଇଟା ପିଲେ ପେପର 2 ର most of the things ମୁଁ ଏଇଥିରେ ତମକୁ ପଢେଇ ଦଉଛି. पेपर 2 नहीं ब्लॉक 2 रो बहुत गुड़ा जिनस आमे एबे भी डिस्कस करूचंती. मधुस्मिता षडंगी, आर यू लिसनिंग? नीलू कुमारी,
Yes, madam.
अनुक्षा महाराणा,
Yes, ma'am.
मनीषा रानी,
Yes, ma'am.
वंदना परिडा,
Yes, ma'am.
जयश्री साहू,
Yes, ma'am.
सुमित्रा परिडा,
Yes, ma'am.
रूपाली दास, मनीषा रानी,
Yes, ma'am.
डी सीता.
Ma'am.
D Sita is the first one who joined this
Yeah.
class. Okay. ସମସ୍ତେ ଶୁଣୁଛ ମାନେ ଇଣ୍ଟରେଷ୍ଟିଂ ଲାଗୁଛି ନା ମନୋଟନସ୍ ଲାଗୁଛି ନା ପିଲେ?
नहीं
नहीं,
मैडम,
अच्छा लग रहा है।
Ma'am, interesting है.
Interesting.
काउंसलिंग से इंटरेस्टिंग.
କାଉନସେଲିଂ ଇଣ୍ଟରେଷ୍ଟିଂ ଲାଗୁଛି?
हाँ.
ହଉ, କିଛି କ୍ୱେଶ୍ଚିନ୍ ଅଛି ୟା ଭିତରେ କି ନା ଆଗକୁ ଯିବା? କାହିଁକିନା ମୁଁ ଏଇଟା ତମକୁ ବ୍ଲକ୍ 2 ର ବି ବହୁତ ଗୁଡ଼ା ଜିନିଷ କହିଦଉଛି. ବ୍ଲକ୍ 2 ଟା ଆମେ ଖାଲି ସ୍କ୍ରୋଲ କରି କରି ଯିବା.
ओके.
ଠିକ ଅଛି? The next is the techniques that is being used by କ'ଣ ଆମର counselor, or the techniques that is used by a psychoanalyst in dealing with the maladaptive behavior or any type of behavioral problem, because counseling focuses on dealing with any type of behavioral problem, maladaptive problem, interpersonal issues, any developmental delays, এই ସବୁ ଜିନିଷ ସହିତ ये deal କରୁଛି. So what are the technique? Free association, dream analysis, analysis of transference, and then interpretation. These are the technique that are being used by Okay, so coming to free association, what happens in free association? As we know that the client is encouraged to remember or to recall his or her childhood memories, the childhood experiences, or anything that is painful and he has suppressed into his unconscious. So the client here is encouraged to be relaxed and freely relax those memories that are there, or those information, those facts that are there in the unconscious mind. This way the unconscious materials come to the conscious mind or to the surface, and once it comes to the conscious mind or to the surface and the client explains ଏଗୁଡ଼ାକ ସବୁ ମୋ ମନରେ ମୁଁ ନା ଏମିତି ଛୋଟ ହେଇଥିଲି, I have been I was abused by my uncle. I was sexually abused by my uncle. My mother never had given me attention. ମୁଁ ସେଇଥିପାଇଁ ମୋର ଛୋଟ ହେଇଥିଲା ବେଳକୁ I never wanted to go to school, କିନ୍ତୁ I was forced to go to school early in the morning. ବହୁତ ଥଣ୍ଡା ହଉଥିଲା, I never want, and that created a trauma, and that trauma is all there in my unconscious. ସେଇଥିପାଇଁ ମୋତେ ପାଠ ପଢିବାର କେବେ ବି ଆଉ ଇଚ୍ଛା ହଉ ନାହିଁ. when when a person or when a student comes with any type of disinterest in his or her studies, you can go back to his childhood and you can get information about how was his childhood, was it traumatic, was it a pleasant childhood, did he face any type of trouble during his childhood, ଏଇ ସବୁକୁ ଆଣିପାରିବ। ସେ ଯଦି ଗୋଟେ ମାନେ ଆଡଲ୍ଟ ଆସୁଛି ଆଉ ସିଏ ସେ ଜିନିଷ ଗୁଡାକୁ ଭୁଲି ଯାଇଥିବ, ସପ୍ରେସ୍ କରିଦେଇଥିବ, through the process of free association all these things can be recalled back। ଯେତେବେଳେ ସିଏ ରିକଲ୍ କରିକି କହିବ ଯେ ମୁଁ ଶୀତ ସକାଳରେ ଛୋଟ ଛୁଆ ହେଇଥିଲା ବେଳକୁ ସ୍କୁଲ ଯିବାକୁ ଇଚ୍ଛା କରୁନଥିଲି, ମତେ ଜବରଦସ୍ତିଆ କରିକି ମୋ ମା ସ୍କୁଲ ପଠେଇ ଦଉଥିଲା, କାହିଁକିନା ବାପା ମା ଦି ଜଣ ଯାକ ୱାର୍କିଂ ଥିଲେ, ଏମିତି ସେବୁଠୁ ମୋର ପଢିବା ପାଇଁ ରାଗ ହେଇଯାଇଛି, ମୋର ପଢିବା ପାଇଁ ଇଚ୍ଛା ନାହିଁ, ମୁଁ ପଢିବିନି, ମୁଁ ମତେ କାହିଁକି all these things blah 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 ସେ କହିବାକୁ ଲାଗିବ। So when he recalls that this is the thing or this is why I am not interested in my studies, ତମେ ସେତେବେଳକୁ as a counselor you will get the information that what is the main cause of his disinterest in his studies and you can resolve, you can deal with that problem। ସେତେବେଳେ ତାକୁ ବୁଝେଇ ହବ ଯେ ଯଦି ବାପା ମା ଦି ଜଣ ଚାକିରି କରିନଥାନ୍ତେ, the life you are leading now, you would never have got such type of lavish life, such type of life where you can get everything as and when you require। ତୋର ସାଙ୍ଗମାନଙ୍କୁ ଦେଖେ whose single parent is working and in see how they are requesting their parents or how they are working to earn money। ଆଉ ତୁ କେମିତିଆ ଲାଇଫ ପାଇଛୁ, ତୋର ଯଦି ବାପା ମା ଦି ଜଣ ଯାକ ଚାକିରି ନ କରିଥାନ୍ତେ ତାହେଲେ ତୋ ତ ଆଜି ଏମିତିଆ ତୁ ଲାଇଫ ପାଇନଥାନ୍ତୁ। ଆଉ ତୋ ମା ସେତେବେଳକୁ ତତେ ସେଇଥିପାଇଁ ପଠେଇ ଦଉଥିଲା ବୋଲି, and this way you can make him realize that that was not a fault of his or her parent, that was actually the demand of the time। ଯେ ତତେ ଯେହେତୁ 5 ବର୍ଷ ହେଇଯାଇଥିଲା, you should go to school, तो बापा माँ चाकरी करवा इज इरेलिवेंट हियर। 5 वर्षर छुआ तू थिलु, तू डेफिनेटली स्कूल जावाक दरकार थिला, नहले तू एति बाट आसी पार नथातु। दिस वे दैट द कॉन्फ्लिक्ट कैन बी रिजॉल्व। चाहा तमे सेमतिया देखुछ से प्रकार रे तमे कहि परिबो। एंड हाउ टू गेट दैट इंफॉर्मेशन, दैट इज थ्रू द प्रोसेस ऑफ फ्री एसोसिएशन। ये दिस इज वन ऑफ द टेक्निक। द नेक्स्ट वन इज ड्रीम एनालिसिस। କୁହାଯାଇଛି dream is the royal road to unconscious। Psychoanalysis is all about unconscious। Analyzing the unconscious is known as psychoanalysis। That is not the literal meaning, but psychoanalysis simply analyzes what is there in the unconscious, it brings those things to conscious and resolves this through psychotherapy। टोटल होची साइकोएनालिसिस रो अर्थ होची एतिकी। द ट्रीटमेंट पार्ट इज साइकोथेरापी, द एनालिटिकल पार्ट, द थियोरिटिकल पार्ट इज साइकोएनालिसिस। तो साइकोएनालिस्ट बा फ्रॉइड कहिले ड्रीम एनालिसिस, थ्रू ड्रीम एनालिसिस we can get a hint, we can know about what is there in our unconscious because of the because of screening, because of scrutiny, we never express our unconscious infantile desires and we suppress them into our unconscious। But when we are sleeping, there is no hindrance to think about those। Even there are some desires also we are not actually dare to think about those। मु स्वप्न सुधा एमितिया भाभी पारिबिनी, आमे कहउचंती एटा तो केते बड़ महापाप, मु एटा को स्वप्न सुधा भाभी पारिबिनी, एया जोटा कहउचंती आमे एमितिया स्वप्न सुधा महापाप परिया बहुत जिंस जोटा आमे भाबीबा को भी इच्छा करिसंती किंतु आमे भाबीबा को डरी जाइसंती, दैट ऑल आर पुश टू आवर अनकॉन्शियस। आ सेमितिया स्वप्न सुधा भाभी पारिबिनी परिया बहुत जिंस जतरो जाय कि अनकॉन्शियस रे गदा हे जाउची, अनरिजॉल्व हे कि मनीष विभिन्न प्रकार मानसिक बीमारीर बा मानसिक विकृतिर शिकार होची। साइकोएनालिस्ट माने से जिनस गुडा को बाहर को आनिकी से जिनस गुडा को सॉल्व कर देला माने आपे आपे मानसिक विकृतिटा दूरेई जाउची। आमे कहउचंती ए डाहाणी लागि गला एमतिया बिहेव करूची, भूत लागि गला या बिहेव करूची, ए झाडरे ताको फुंकरे गुणिया को दियरे पैसा ए सब आमे करूचंती। तो आमे केमिति जानिबा व्हाट इज देयर इन द अनकॉन्शियस, बिकॉज सेटा होची आइसबर्गटा जमती पूरा पानी भितर अच्छी आमको खाली 1/10 ही देखा जाउची 10 भागर भागे देखा होची सेमती आमे कॉन्शियस टार ओनली 10% ही देखि पारछंती 90% जोटा भितर अछि आमे जानि ना हंती सेते बडो आइस खंडेटे पानी भितर अछि बोली सेमिति आम मनर 9th 10th पार्ट आमर पानी भितर रही जाइछि जोटा कि आमे जानि पारु नाहंती ताकू केमती जानिबा फर्स्ट तो आमे जानिले ए जो कोन पिले free association through even through the process of or through analyzing the dream also we can know what is there in our unconscious hela the next is analysis of transference. Transference is the client's response to the counselor as if the counselor were some significant figure in the client's past, usually a parent figure. Ame counseling working in the counseling relationship पढ़िला बेले transference and counter transference पढ़िथिले transference ର ଅର୍ଥ କ'ଣ the client feels that the counselor is some significant person in his life a past significant person in his life मोर काउंसलर मो बापा को परिया लागुची मोर बड़ भाई परिया लागुची जिए मते सब बेले भल पाइचंती जिए मते दिग्दर्शन देइचंती एई प्रकार एनीवन who doesn't understand ओडिया
समझ में आता है मैडम कहीं कहीं पे थोड़ा सा
हाँ ठीक है मैंने बीच बीच में मैं बोल लेती हूँ तो इसीलिए समझ में आ रहा है तो ठीक है क्योंकि मैंने इन फ्लो while explaining in Odia I think I am more clear that's why I start using Odia से जो मैंने जदि न जानी then I would stick to English only okay ठीक अछि so the client feels that the counselor or here the counselor is some significant person in his past and usually a parent figure and he starts showing those type of reaction those type of love affection respect to the counselor and uh, that is actually detrimental to the counseling process but here according to psychoanalytic theory if the client shows such behavior or shows such type of transference that should be analyzed to give us an idea about the unconscious of our client so the transference should be analyzed or analyzing the transference is another technique to know about our unconscious mind the next one is interpretation so it doesn't end with free association it doesn't end with dream analysis it doesn't end with transference those things should be analyzed and those things should be interpreted in a meaningful way so that we can come to a conclusion and we can deal with the problem of the client तो बुझी पारला पिले
yes ma'am
शुणुच ना मु खाली बकबक ही चलची मु भी जानी पारनी
सुन रहे हैं मैम
शुणुच मु एते गुडा एनर्जी देई कि बकबक ही चलची रे पिले सो मु तुमको ब्लॉक 2 रटा भी या सहित सहित कहि दउची कंफ्यूज्ड हबो कि
नो मैम
ब्लॉक 2 रो फर्स्ट यूनिट रे तमरो अछि साइकोथेरापी then psychoanalysis its history then techniques in psychoanalysis psychodynamic therapies एया कहि कि अछि सो जोडा हमें psychoanalysis पढिले वर्तमान we will discuss what is psychotherapy it consists of the whole range of psychologically based treatments by which trained practitioner help people to have help people who have psychological problem or these are the psychotherapy therapists are the people who help the person having any type of psychological problem so it's a systematic interaction between the therapist and the client that bring psychological principles to bear on influencing the client's thought, feeling, and behavior, and help the client to overcome abnormal behavior or adjust with the problem in living. So we discussed about psychoanalysis, and psychotherapy is the treatment aspect of psychoanalysis. And here there is a client and a counselor. Counselor is the person who gives some counseling to the client who comes with some problem, some behavioral problem, some adjustment problem, or some abnormal behavior, and the counselor follows some theories of psychology to deal with the problem of the client. So these are the procedure in which the person with mental disorder interact with a trained psychotherapist who helps in changing his behavior, thought, emotion, and so that they feel better and they can function in a better way, and they can adjust with the they have better adjustment with their life. They lead a happy and healthy life. So it consists of a series of technique for treating mental health, emotional, and some psychiatric disorder. So, what are the essentials or what are the necessary steps in psychotherapy? There is some systematic interaction between the psychiatrist or the therapist and the client, and it follows some psychological principles. Psychotherapy is based on some psychological principles, starting from learning to personality to these psychoanalytic theories and all these things. It follows some psychological principles, and it deals with it deals with the thought, feelings, and behavior of the client, and it deals with psychological disorder, adjustment problem, and in some cases it's not always about dealing with the negative aspect of human. It sometimes it is used for the personal growth of the person also. So, psychoanalysis, as we studied, it is a method of analyzing psychic phenomena and treating the emotional disorder. So, we have already discussed about psychoanalysis. Psychoanalysis was proposed by Freud, and it is a process of analyzing the psychic phenomena as well as dealing the problems. It is both a theory of mental functioning and a specific type of psychological treatment philosophy. It is generally known as a theory of human behavior. So it's already 1 hour. Give me 2-3 minutes back. I will return back to you. Are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
କୁହ ସମସ୍ତେ ନିଜ ବିଷୟରେ ଗୋଟେ ମିନିଟ୍, ଗୋଟେ ମିନିଟ୍ରେ ସମସ୍ତେ କୁହ ଫଟାଫଟ। କିଏ କ'ଣ? नीलू कुमारी, tell me something about yourself.
हाँ मैम, मैं हाउसवाइफ हूँ
हम्म।
और मैं साइकोलॉजी बस यहाँ पे जो मैं जहाँ जिस प्लेस में रह रही हूँ मैडम, यहाँ पे लोगों को बहुत सारा प्रॉब्लम है कि
कहाँ पे आपको?
मैं बड़बिल में हूँ मैम।
हाँ हाँ।
तो यहाँ पे ही मुझे ऐसा आया कि मुझे पढ़ना चाहिए। एक्चुअली मैं 45 इयर्स ओल्ड हूँ, लेकिन मुझे यहाँ का स्थिति देख के पढ़ने का इच्छा हुआ मैडम साइकोलॉजी।
साइकोलॉजी पढ़ने का इच्छा। तो आप कुछ कंट्रीब्यूट कर पाओगे लोगों को वहाँ पे?
जी मैडम, मैं यहाँ पे एक्चुअली ऐसे ही जो मैं यहाँ बैठते हैं हम लोग इवनिंग, सारे एज ग्रुप के लोग हैं।
हाँ हाँ।
मैक्सिमम हमारे एज के ग्रुप के जो लोग हैं लोनली फील करते हैं, क्योंकि हस्बैंड यहाँ पे माइनिंग एरिया है और
हाँ
यहाँ पे जॉब बहुत ही हैट्रिक है। तो मैं उन लोगों का काउंसलिंग करती हूँ ऐसे, लेकिन कहीं से ऐसा नहीं किसी एनजीओ किसी से, क्योंकि मैं भी यहाँ न्यू हूँ मैडम। तो
हाँ।
लेकिन मैं उन लोगों का करती हूँ और वो सेटिस्फाई रहते हैं मुझसे।
जस्ट मेरा बैटरी लो हो रहा है। हाँ, तो आप फील कर रही हो कि आप कुछ तो काउंसलिंग कर पा रही हो उन लोगों का?
हाँ जी जी मैडम जी, मैं कन्विंस कर, वो लोग हमारी मेरी बात को मानते हैं और कुछ लोग तो मतलब पूछते भी हैं कि आप बताइए क्या करना चाहिए ऐसा।
वेरी गुड, वेरी गुड। आप इंटरेस्ट ली पढ़ने के लिए ये इसमें, ये बहुत बड़ी बात है। और
जी मैम।
आप देखिए कि ऐसा प्रॉब्लम है और मैं अगर इसका कुछ कोर्स कर लूँ तो और अच्छे से कंट्रीब्यूट कर पाऊंगी,
जी
ये
जी
भी
जी
बड़ी बात है। मैंने सब लोग शायद आपकी बात से इंस्पायर होंगे, जो बाकी लर्नर से आप एक
जी जी।
इंस्पिरेशन हो सकती हो, मुझे ऐसा लग रहा है। सुमित्रा परिड़ा।
Yes, yes,
थैंक
ma'am.
यू मैडम।
सुमित्रा परिड़ा कुह कौन तम विषय?
नहीं मैम, मु बस एबे प्रिपरेशन करची कॉम्पिटिटिव आउ एबे ग्रेजुएशन पर जस्ट पीजी ही जॉइन करिची।
ग्रेजुएशन पर कोठी तम घर कोठी?
खोर्धा डिस्ट्रिक्ट रो बानपुर भगवती टेम्पल जोठी अछि
बाणपुर।
सेठी घर।
हाँ।
आज्ञा।
ग्रेजुएशन पर भाबिल कि डिस्टेंस रे पीजी करिवो बोली कहिके?
आज्ञा मैम, प्रिपरेशन अलग किछि करी होची तो एटा बेटर होची
साइड बाय
पढ़ा पढ़ी
साइड
पे।
दुईटा जाक करि परिवो।
आज्ञा मैम।
हाँ, हो ठीक अछि। बाकी मानक सहित कथा हबा, मु आउटे पढै दिए।
थैंक यू मैम।
So next is psychoanalysis is both a theory and a procedure of treatment. So it includes these two things. Then we have already discussed what is ego, superego, and all these things. So here the phases of evolution of psychology is given. You will go through that. इसका history भी दिया गया है. You have to go through that. एते गुड़ाक आम डिस्कस करिबा जदि टाइम हबनी। देन व्हाट इज द जॉब ऑफ ए साइकोएनालिस्ट, जोटा आमे कहले साइकोथेरापिस्ट, साइकोएनालिस्ट सेटा होची इट्स बेसिकली हेल्प द पर्सन टू टेल his or her story by establishing a solid working alliance with the client to gather background information and history about the client and select the problem or issue to be worked on. The person may come with a lot of problem, a problem, say problem, variety of problem se asi thai pare, but it's the duty or it's the job of the psychoanalyst is to find out what is the main problem or which problem should be addressed. He tries to explore the precipitating events or the predisposing event and deal with resistance shown by the client. से client तार थेरापी बेले से रेजिस्टेंस देखैबो। ए जो मु जति के कहिली तमको फ्री एसोसिएशन वगैरह तार आउरी टिके अछि, while in the process of free association or in the process of dream analysis, the client shows some sort of resistance, the client goes on telling about his childhood memories, se kahi chalichi eya heitila seya heitila seya heitila sabu tara story kahi chalchi, but all of a sudden the client stops sharing the information, se either ଟିକେ ମାନେ ଇମୋସନାଲ ହେଇଯିବ ବା ସିଏ ଆଗ୍ରେସିଭ ହେଇଯିବ ବା ସିଏ ଚାହିଁବନି ସେ ଜିନିଷକୁ ସେୟାର କରିବା ପାଇଁ, that is known as resistance. And here it is the role of the counselor, role of the therapist to capture that resistance shown by the client. କାହିଁକି କ୍ଲାଏଣ୍ଟ ଟା ସେଇ ପାଖରେ ଅଟକି ଗଲା, ସେ ତ ଫ୍ରି ଫ୍ଲୋ ରେ କହି ଚାଲିଥିଲା, why the client has shown this resistance, ସେଇଟାକୁ ସିଏ କ୍ୟାପଚର କରିକି ତାର କ'ଣ ଅସୁବିଧା ଅଛି ସେ ବିଷୟରେ ସିଏ ଜାଣିପାରିବ। He then collaborates with the client to form diagnosis and treatment plan ତା ସହିତ ମିଶିକି ହିଁ କରିବ, ଯେମିତି ଆମେ ପଢିଥିଲେ କାଉନସିଲିଂ ରେ। It's a process help in exploring the client's transference and monitors the therapist counselor transference. It helps examining how the past is impacting the present. It helps the client to behave more effectively. It provides feedback and confronts discrepancies, negotiates with the client and regarding the homework assignment. It reminds the client of the termination date and end therapy as agreed upon by the client. Psychoanalysis schedules follow-up to as needed. এটা যেତେବେଳେ termination ବି ହେଇଯାଉଛି ତାପରେ ବି the client and the counselor or the therapist meet in some follow-up sessions. ସରିଗଲା ପରେ ପୁରା ସରିଗଲା ବୋଲି ନାହିଁ, ତାପରେ ବି ଆଉ ଥରେ ସେମାନେ meet କରନ୍ତି ବା sessions ହୁଏ, ଯୋଉଥିପାଇଁ କି what is the primary goal? The primary goal is to help the client in achieving insight. ତାକୁ କ୍ଲାଏଣ୍ଟ କୁ ଇନସାଇଟ୍ ଦବା ପାଇଁ କି ତାର ଇନସାଇଟ୍ ଡେଭଲପ କରିବା ପାଇଁ, which can consciously make them aware of the psychodynamics that underlie the problem. ତାର ଯୋଉ actual problem ଅଛି ତାର ପଛରେ କ'ଣ କାରଣ ଅଛି ତା ବିଷୟରେ ଇନସାଇଟ୍ ଦବା is the primary goal. And secondary goal or the second major goal, no, it is not secondary goal, the second goal is help the client work through a developmental stage that is not resolving the primary goal. ଆମେ ସେଇଥିରେ ଯାହା ପଢିଥିଲେ, ତାପରେ final goal କ'ଣ, help the client cope with the demand of the society in which they live or to adjust with the life that client has got. The goal of psychoanalysis is to enable the person to deal with his unconscious urges in a realistic and matured manner. ଯେତେବେଳେ ଆମେ ଆମର unconscious suppressed urges desires conflict କୁ unrealistic way ରେ, immature way ରେ, id directed way ରେ when we are dealing with them, in that situation we usually face or show maladaptive behavior, maladjustment or any type of behavioral problem or mental issues. So here the goal of the psychoanalyst, counselor, psychotherapist is to help the person to deal with those things, those unconscious things in a more matured, more realistic manner ବୋଲି କହିକି। Now coming to the techniques of psychoanalysis, ସେଇଟା ହେଉଛି free association, dream analysis, interpretation, analysis of resistance, analysis of transference, ଯୋଉଟା କି ଆମେ already discuss କରି ସାରିଲେଣି। ଏଇଠି ଦେଖ, Freud was of the opinion that we can give expression to our desires, impulses that we are unable to express during our waking hours because they are unacceptable by our society. So we can gratify those illicit sexual desires, those unacceptable thoughts which we generally repress during the day, that can come to the surface during our uncensored state, that is in our dream. ଆମେ ଯେତେବେଳେ ଶୋଇଥାନ୍ତି ସେତେବେଳେ ଆମେ ଅନସେନ୍ସର୍ଡ, ଆମେ କିଛି ସେନ୍ସର୍ଡ ହେଇକି ଜିନିଷ ଗୁଡାକ ଆମେ ଭାବନ୍ତି ନାହିଁ, ସେଇଥିପାଇଁ ଡ୍ରିମ୍ ରେ ସେଗୁଡାକ ଆସିଯାଏ। Then the interpretation, सेटा में हमें पढ़िले analysis and interpretation of resistance. Anything which works against the progress of the therapy and prevents the client to produce unconscious material is called resistance. The client shows reluctance to bring unconscious material at the level of awareness. Freud viewed this as an unconscious dynamic that people use to defend against the anxiety and pain that would arise if they become aware of those repressed feelings. So they show this resistance. So resistance is a defense against anxiety, and that prevents the client and the therapist from succeeding in their effort to gain insight into the dynamics of unconscious, as in pre-association, in dream analysis and all these things. Agoru gote technique use କରାଉଥିଲା hypnosis, that is no more in use nowadays. ତ ସେ ବାକି ଏଇଗୁଡାକୁ ୟୁଜ କରାହଉଛି ଡ୍ରିମ୍ ଆନାଲିସିସ୍ ଏଗୁଡାକ, ଯୋଉଥିରେ କି ଆମର ୟାକୁ ରେଜିଷ୍ଟାନ୍ସକୁ ଆମେ ଦେଖିପାରିବା, ତାକୁ ରେଜିଷ୍ଟାନ୍ସକୁ ନୋଟିସ୍ କରିକି ତାକୁ ଡିଲ୍ କରିପାରିବା। ସିମିଲାରଲି ଟ୍ରାନ୍ସଫରେନ୍ସ ଯୋଉଟା ହଉଛି, ଇଟ୍ ଇଜ ଦ କ୍ଲାଏଣ୍ଟସ୍ ରେସ୍ପନ୍ସ ଟୁ ଦ କାଉନସିଲର as if the counselor were some significant figure in the client's past, usually a parent figure. Transference is a displacement of attitude and feeling originally experienced in the relationship with the person onto the analyst. In the long past history of the patient might have an association with the person. Now he is feeling or thinking that this is the person. Similarly, counselor भी client पाइंकी जो प्रकार feeling हबो, that is known as counter transference. So there are different psychodynamic psychoanalytic therapies are there. एगुड़ा सब फ्रॉइडियन, ईगो साइकोलॉजी, ऑब्जेक्ट रिलेशनशिप एंड सेल्फ साइकोलॉजी एगुड़ा को होची different. Then we will discuss behavior therapy, but before that let's go to this Alderian approach in your block 1. एमिति कहिले पिले confused होछ कि
नहीं
confused हो ना तो
नो मैम
एइटा जो थियोरी लेखा है सेटा पुणी जाइके सेठी पढुछ तमे ब्लॉक 2 रे, सेति पई कि मु याकु ताकु मिसै कि कहि दोछि किए नुआ पिला जॉइन करछ रे। जसश्री साहू, निशिता अग्रवाल,
मैम
और पुरुना अरुण 21 खदीजा किए जने।
यस मैम।
विजय कुमार मंडल।
यस मैम।
सुनु सब समझते?
यस मैम।
ठीक है। नाउ कमिंग टू Alderian approach. He attempts to view the world from the client's subjective frame of reference. So how life is in reality is less important than how the individual believes the life to be. ମୁଁ कौन भाबुची माने सतरे मो लाइफ कौन, that is immaterial. ମୁଁ कौन भाबुची मो लाइफ को, how I am perceiving my life, how I am viewing my life, how I am interpreting my life, that is actually important. So the basic premise here is that human beings are always becoming, that is that we are always moving towards the future and our concerns are geared towards our subjective goal rather than our objective past. We are constantly aiming towards what Alder called superiority. When we have on ame sabu bele we want to be a better version of our life, we always want to prosper, we always want to go a step ahead, we always want to improve. But when our goal or our aim is unrealistic, unachievable or unattainable, then it puts us in a difficult situation. It puts pressure on us, it creates stress on us, and ultimately we experience different types of mental disorder. ମୁଁ 60 ମାର୍କ ରଖିବାର ପିଲା, I have set a goal that I will get 90 marks in the coming exam. So I will definitely face various type of mental issues. ମୁଁ 60 ମାର୍କ ରଖିବା ପିଲା, but I have set a goal that I will get 70 marks in the next exam. So I will try my best, I will give efforts to get that 70 mark. It may happen that I may get 75 or I may get 68 mark. And that again, I should always accept the fact that I may get a bit less than what I am expecting, or I may get bit less than 70. ମୁଁ ଯଦି ଅଡି ବସିଲି 60 ମାର୍କ ର ପିଲା, ମୋ ମୁଣ୍ଡ ହଉଛି 60 ମାର୍କ ରଖିଲା ପରିଆ, ମୋର ଅକାଦ ହଉଛି ଗୋଟେ କଣ ଇଭି ସ୍କୁଟର କିଣିବା ପାଇଁ କି, ମୁଁ କିନ୍ତୁ ଭାବିଲି ଗୋଟେ କିଣିବି ମର୍ସିଡିଜ, ମୁଁ କିଣିବି ଯଦି ମର୍ସିଡିଜ ନ ହେଲା ମାନେ ମୁଁ ଆଉ କୌଣସି ଜିନିଷ ମୁଁ ଚଲେଇବି ନାହିଁ ଜମା ବି, ମୁଁ ମର୍ସିଡିଜଟେ ହିଁ କିଣିବି। ସୋ ଆଇ ୱିଲ୍ ଫେସ୍ ମେଣ୍ଟାଲ ଇସ୍ୟୁଜ। ମୁଁ କିଣିପାରିବିନି, ତାପରେ ମୋତେ ଯିଏ କିଣିଛି ତାର ଗାଡିକୁ ଦେଖିକି ପଥର ମାରିବି, ଇଏ ଗଲା ମାନେ ତାକୁ ଦେଖିକି କହିବି ଆହା ଆହା ସିଏ ଗୋଟେ ମର୍ସିଡିଜ ଧରିକି ଯାଉଛି, ଦେନ୍ all the issues will start, jota ki Aldrin କହିଥିଲେ। View of human, he emphasized that it is not the childhood experience as said by Freud. Freud kon कहले childhood experiences are the main causes of or suppressed childhood experiences are the main causes of our mental issues, kintu ye कहले this is not the childhood experience that are the villain, rather it is our present interpretation of this event। ଚାଇଲ୍ଡହୁଡ୍ ଏକ୍ସପିରିଏନ୍ସଟା ଏତେ କିଛି ନୁହଁ, ମୁଁ ତାକୁ କେମିତି ଇଣ୍ଟରପ୍ରିଟ କରିଛି, ଦ୍ୟାଟ୍ ଇଜ ଦ ଇଏ। ମୁଁ ସିଏ ମତେ ଭଲରେ କହିଲା ଯେ ବାପରେ ତୁ ତ ଆଜି ବହୁତ ସୁନ୍ଦର ଦେଖାଯାଉଛୁ, ମୁଁ ତାକୁ ଇଣ୍ଟରପ୍ରିଟ କରିବି, ଆଚ୍ଛା ମୁଁ ବୋଧେ ଆଜି ଭଲ ଦେଖାଉନି, ସିଏ ସେଥିପାଇଁ ମତେ କହିଲା, ସିଏ ଏମିତି କହିଲା, ମୁଁ ଆଜି ବୋଧେ ଭଲ ଦେଖାଉନି, ନାହିଁ ମୁଁ ଘରକୁ ପଳାଏ, ମୁଁ ଯାଇକି ଶାଢୀ ଚେଞ୍ଜ କରିକି ଆସେ, ମୁଁ ଯାଇକି ମୋର ମେକଅପ ଚେଞ୍ଜ କରି, that will put pressure, that will create anxiety within me। So it is not what she said, it is not what is the event, it is not what the reality is, but what I am interpreting is the reason of my misery or my suffering। And he said that the role of the counselor is primarily as a diagnostician, teacher, model in an equitarian relationship they establish with the client। And similarly, like the psychoanalyst, he said that establish and maintenance of an egalitarian counseling relationship, analysis of the client's lifestyle, interpretation of the client's lifestyle in such a way that it promotes insight, reorientation, re-education of the client with accompanying behavioral changes, because this theory believes that the way we perceive, the way we interpret our life, the way we interpret an event is the main cause of any problem. So we should analyze our life, we should interpret our life, we should reorient and re-educate our client. Here our life means the client's life. So what are the techniques Alderians use? They use confrontation, where the counselor challenges the client to consider their own private logic. When client examines this logic, they often realize that they can change it and their behavior। जो client भाबुची सब प्रकार ताको भूल interpret करिया को लागुची, counselor एठी will help the client to reinterpret or reinterpret those things in a correct way। How the client will interpret? Once the client confront करिवो से जिंस गुडाको, ताको आजि पर्यंत किए कहि नाहंती जे तू एया परा भाबुछु सेति पई तू कष्ट पाउछु, एथिरे काउंसलर ताको कहिबो। Asking the question, the counselor asks what would be different if you were well, एत तो एया असुविधा हे जाय, एटा न होइतले कोन हेइथांता, that will give insight to the client। Encourage the client, acting as if client are instructed to act as if they are the person they wanted to be. तमे जदि एया न होई कि सेया हिथांता कौन हिथांता catching oneself and push button. These are the techniques that are being used by the counselor. Then another one is person centered and existential gestalt approach. This person centered approach, these are the theories of counseling पिला माने मु कहूची ब्लॉक 2 रे आमे पढुथिले थेरापी विषय. So आउ गोटे अप्रोच बा आउ गोटे थियोरी होची पर्सन सेंटर्ड, आउ गोटे होची एक्जिस्टेंशियल, आउ गोटे होची गेस्टाल्ट. So this person centered approach was developed by Carl Roger in 1940s. ସିଏ କ'ଣ କହିଥିଲେ that people have the capacity and the right to move towards self actualization. ଲୋକମାନଙ୍କର people are that much powerful, they know how to move towards self actualization. This theory views people as rational, forward moving and realistic beings. Clients as their own this theory believes that clients are their best authority on their own experience, and the client is fully capable of fulfilling their own potential for growth. So Roger believes that people are essentially good, people are usually positive, people are forward moving, people are constructive, people are realistic and trustworthy. एमाने मनीषर मानविकता बा गुड क्वालिटी बा गुड एस्पेक्ट उपरे एई जो पर्सन सेंटर्ड एक्जिस्टेंशियल लोक माने बिलीव करूथिले. इन दिस थियोरी बिलीव करूथिले माने दिस थियोरी बिलीव करूची. आ ए थियोरी कार्ल रोजर्स डेवलप करिथिले. This in this theory there is no such thing as mental illness बोली किछि. There is no concept of illness, there is no concept of disease, there is no concept of disorder. It is just a matter of being disconnected from our self potential. आमे actually mentally ill नुह, आमे mentally abnormal नुह, आमे mentally disordered नुह, but there is some disconnection from our self potential, and we can say this is the most optimistic approach to human potential. People are good, people are positive. ei jo manobhava jogu this theory can be called as the most optimistic approach. And as the approach is different, what is the role of counselor in this theory? The counselor's role is holistic one. He setups and promotes the climate in which the client is free and is encouraged to explore all aspects of life. And their goal kona hoji, he emphasizes that people need to be assisted in learning how to cope with situation. The client moves towards the goal of realization. As I said that it is the job of the person is to get self actualization. So the counselor helps the client to move towards the goal of realization, fulfillment, autonomy, self determination, perfection by becoming more realistic in their perception. So what are the techniques that are being used by this Rogerian theory, person centered theory or existential theory, that is the unconditional positive regard? आमर काउंसलिंग प्रोसेसटा मोस्टली ए रोजरियन थियोरी ऊपर बेस्ड हेची. आमे काली पढ़ी थिले काउंसलिंग रे अनकंडीशनल पॉजिटिव रिगार्ड. कोन पिले अनकंडीशनल पॉजिटिव रिगार्ड?
Without
अनकंडीशनल
wanting
पॉजिटिव
anything back from somebody. You don't expect anything back from anybody. And you give them,
ना ना
you are being really nice to them.
ना 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 अनकंडीशनल
Ma'am,
पॉजिटिव
we don't judge them.
सेटा होची नॉन जजमेंटल, जोटा कहूछ नॉन जजमेंटल भी गोटे थिला. किंतु पॉजिटिव रिगार्ड टा कोन?
Ma'am,
से
being
वर्ड
very
नहीं.
nice to them. Acha word.
We
Ma'am,
have
there is no
to
condition there. There is nothing.
we have to accept our client unconditionally. जोटा नॉन जजमेंटल बोली कहला, unconditionally आमे ताको accept करिबा. We should respect our client, we should respect the uniqueness of our client, we should respect the thoughts, the feelings, the attitude of our client. unconditionally, that is unconditional positive regard. ତା ସହିତ ବି ଯୋଉ we should be non judgmental ଯୋଉଟା ଥିଲା ସେ ଗୋଟେ ଜିନିଷ. So it means the counselor accepts the client unconditionally and non judgmentally. The client is free to explore all thoughts, feelings, positive or negative, without danger of rejection or condemnation. As a counselor, if I start scrutinizing, judging the statements given by client, ମୋ କ୍ଲାଏଣ୍ଟ ଆଉ କହିବ ତାର କଥା ଗୁଡାକ, ତାର କଷ୍ଟ ପେନ୍ ଗୁଡା ମତେ କଣ କହିବ କି ରେ ପିଲେ? ସେ କହିବ ନାହିଁ. So I should be non judgmental. I should accept I should accept the feelings, thoughts, the ideas of my client in an unconditional fashion. The client is free to explore and to express without having to do anything in particular to meet any particular standard of behavior. This is unconditional positive regard. This is one of the techniques used by this existential humanistic theory. Existential theory, the humanistic theory କୁହାଯାଉଛି. Then empathetic understanding, kali ame padhithile counseling re kemti empathetically we have to understand the problem. Cultural empathy, au kono primary empathy, advanced empathy sabu padhithile. So the ei theory ta hi mainly influence karuchi the process of counseling we are using nowadays. So we should empathetically listen to our client and understand the client's problem. Then next is congruence. The counselor is authentic and genuine and transparent to the client. That means congruence. So he mentioned 6 core conditions for personality change in the client. 2% are in the psychological contact. The client is in a state of incongruence. The counselor is congruent and involved in the relationship. The counselor experiences unconditional positive regard for the client. The counselor experiences empathetic understanding of the client's frame of reference. The communication of empathetic and positive regard is achieved. So these are the core condition of any counseling relationship as stated by this humanistic existential person-centered theorist. So what are the methods that help this counseling process? Active and passive listening. Not only listening, there must be some active listening as well as passive listening. Active listening, listening, hearing, what difference will?
Ma'am, listening means we hear a person intentionally. Hearing means any word comes to us, but we may have interest or we may not have interest.
Someone comes, he says something, we may hear him or not hear him. That is hearing.
That is hearing.
Actually, ଆଉ କିଏ କହିବ ପିଲେ? Hearing is physical in nature, whereas listening is psychological, emotional, mental in nature. ତମେ ମୁଁ କଣ କହୁଛି, most of you are hearing only. Those who are answering to me, yes ho, no ho, those who are listening to me, they are only answering. ବାକି ଯୋଉମାନେ ଖାଲି ହିୟର କରୁଛନ୍ତି, ଗୋଟେ ଭଏସ ଯାଉଛି, ସେଇଥିରେ କଣ ଗୋଟେ ଏକ୍ଜିଷ୍ଟେନ୍ସିଆଲ କହିଦେଲେ, ପର୍ସନ ସେଣ୍ଟର୍ଡ କହିଦେଲେ, ହ୍ୟୁମାନିଷ୍ଟିକ କହିଦେଲେ, ଥିଓରି କଣ ଗୁଡା ସବୁ କହୁଛନ୍ତି, ଜାର୍ଗନ୍ସ ଗୁଡା ସାଇକୋଲୋଜିର ଏ ମ୍ୟାଡମ ବସିକି, that is hearing. ଯୋଉମାନେ what is person centered, what is existential, ମ୍ୟାଡମ କଣ କ୍ୱେଶ୍ଚିନ୍ ଟା ପଚାରିଲେ, they are actually listening. Listening is giving your or hearing with your attention, hearing with your mind, giving attention to what is giving attention to the sound you are hearing. ଆଉ ହିୟରିଂ ମୋ କାନକୁ ଯାହା ଯାହା ଶବ୍ଦ ବାଜିଲା, ଏଇ ଗୋଟେ କବାଟ ଧଡଧାଡ ହେଲାଣି, ରାସ୍ତାରେ ଗାଡି ଗୋଟେ ପେଁ ପେଁ ହେଲାଣି, I am hearing all those things. But if I am waiting for my friend, ଗାଡିଟାର ଯୋଉ ହର୍ନ ବାଜିଲା, ଇଏ ଆଉ କଣ ମୋ ସାଙ୍ଗ ଆସିଲା କି ଗାଡିଟାରେ, that is I am listening whether she has arrived or not. ଏଇଆ ହଉଛି listening. So listening, active listening କଣ, passive listening କଣ?
But maybe when you are nodding or responding with some okay, uh, and passive is when you are actually the client won't be able to understand like if you are actually paying attention or not.
Sometimes we show some non-verbal behavior, even verbal behavior, that we are listening to you, and sometimes we don't show any type of non-verbal behavior also to make you realize that I am listening to you. Or I might be engaged in something else, but I am listening to whatever being said by you. That is called passive. And active, when I am giving my whole attention to you, I am there, only there for you, or there to listen to whatever is being said by you. I am showing some verbal behavior, I am showing some non-verbal behavior. Even if I am not showing any type of verbal non-verbal behavior, but I am giving attention, that is your active listening. So this we already discussed about active passive listening in our last class. Reflection of thoughts and feelings, that is through summarization, clarification, and all these things I said you in the last class. Confrontation of contradictions. In some cases the client shows some type of contradictory statements, or statements that are contradictory to the societal norm, to the law, or to the realistic feelings, or to the reality. In those cases the counselor makes the client confront, helps the client, or confronts the client to those unrealistic or contradictory things. That is confrontation of contradiction. General or open leads that help the client for self exploration, because the aim is self exploration. Through self exploration, the client will get self actualization. That is the main goal of this person centered therapy. Existential therapy is also more or less similar to the person centered therapy. This theory is not designed to cure people, but to help the client reflect and search for values and meaning in life. This person centered theory says that the theory helps the person, or this approach helps the person to get self realization, self actualization, whereas this existential theory also more or less similar, to help the client reflect and search for values and meaning in life. So this was introduced by Rollo May. You must be knowing the name of Viktor Frankl, who is a famous existentialist. Those who have time, you can go to the web and you can search about Viktor Frankl, who suffered in the camps. कौन को कैंप्रे फैक्टर फ्रैंकल कहीपर कि किए पिले जो एमान को नहीं कि ये करिथिले माने वर्ल्ड हिस्ट्री रो सबठु जघन्य जिंस होची जोटा मने पकई पारनी मु सबुडा को कई जानिछ तापर बहुत फिल्म गुडा कहिछि भी Viktor Frankl was one of the bandi in those camps, and he has suffered a lot in those camps. And he is a famous existentialist. After coming from there, he has written in numerous books. Viktor Franklଙ୍କର ସବୁଠୁ famous book ବି ଅଛି ଯୋଉଟାକୁ you can go through that. ये ମୁଁ ମନେ ପକେଇଛି କୋଉଟା ବି ତମକୁ ୟା ଭିତରୁ
Men
କହିପାରିବି.
search of meaning.
ହଁ ହଁ
Men
Man
search
search
for
for
meaning.
meaning. He was in concentration camp.
he was
Concentration
Men
camp. जो
concentration camp.
जर्मन
हाँ हाँ
जो
हाँ
जर्मन
concentration camp.
लोग
Holocaust.
जो
जर्मन
जर्मन
माने
आर्मी
हाँ
है
हाँ जर्मन माने
जर्मन माने जो माने हाँ, जो जर्मन लोगों ने यहूदी को बंदी बनाया था उसी का कंसंट्रेशन कैंप के बारे में हुई
हाँ ସେମାନଙ୍କୁ जो जर्मन कैंप रे हिटलर करो जो ଇଏରେ କ୍ୟାମ୍ପରେ ଇଏ ଥିଲେ ଆଉ ତାଙ୍କର ବହିର ନାଁ ଗୋଟେ କିଛି ମନେ ପକେଇବାନି ହଉ ତମେ ଆଜି
Men
ଦେଖିବ
search for meaning.
ହଁ
Men's search
Men
for
search
meaning.
for meaning.
ହଁ ମୁଁ କ୍ଲିଅରଲି ଶୁଣିପାରୁନି ଠିକ ଅଛି ଯୋଉଟା ବି ମାନେ ମୁଁ ଶୁଣିକି ମନେ ପକେଇ ପାରିବା ମାନେ ରିଲେଟ କରିପାରିବା କଥା ମୁଁ ସେଇଟାକୁ ବି ରିଲେଟ କରିପାରୁନି ଠିକ ଅଛି ଯୋଉଟା ବି ବଟ୍ ହି ୱାଜ ଏ କାଉନସିଲର ହି ହେଜ୍ କାଉନସିଲ ଭିକ୍ଟର ଫ୍ରାଙ୍କଲଙ୍କର ଗୋଟେ ବଢିଆ ଷ୍ଟୋରିଟେ ଅଛି ସେଇଟା ବି ମୁଁ ତମକୁ କହିବି ଲାଷ୍ଟ 5 minutesରେ ସେଇଟାକୁ ତା ଭିତରେ ଯିଏ ପାରୁଛ ଟିକେ ଦେଖିକି ଗୁଗୁଲ କରିକି ସେଇଟାକୁ ବାହାର କରିଥାଅ ସେ କଣ କରୁଥିଲେ the next is view of human nature according to this existential theory human being form their lives by their choices they make suffering ho ki happiness ho that is the thing they have chosen on their own this has not been imposed to them but rather it is a choice they have opted so this theory says so what is the role of a counselor according to this theory? This theory says that counselors are focused on helping the client to achieve and expand their self-awareness because ଏଇଥିରେ ଆମେ ପଢିଲେ ଯେ this theory believes that the client should reflect and search for value and meaning in life. So say counselor helps the client to achieve and expand this self-awareness through this the person or the client can achieve these values in his life. It is assumed that once self awareness is achieved, the client can examine new ways of dealing with the problem and accept the responsibility of choosing. The counselor here simply helps the client to get self awareness. What is once the client gets self aware or he becomes self aware, he knows what is good for him, what is wrong for him, how to reach at the goal, what is the goal. He can set his goal and he can solve his problem on his own. He can take his responsibility and deal with the problem. So the counselor responsibility is to be aware of his or her own biases and prejudice also, as the role of the counselor here is to show or help the client get self-awareness. Before making the client self-aware, the client should also be aware of his own biases and prejudices. So what is the goal of this technique? The goal of the technique is not to cure mental disorder, rather to get rid of the symptoms. Rather it is to cure the mental disorder or to get rid of the symptoms. As at the starting we discussed that it doesn't deal with mental disorder or it doesn't deal with solving the mental problems, rather it helps the person or the client to be self aware of what is going in his life and encouraging him to act in a more life changing decision, to take more life changing decision. It is aimed at helping the people get out of their rigid roles and see more clearly the ways in which they have been leading a narrow and restricted existence. They should broaden up their mind, they should think in diverse, they should develop divergent thinking, they should have the judgment to weigh what is the pros and cons. They should be self-aware and take their own decision. So the specific goals are enable people to become more truthful to themselves, to reflect upon and understand their existence, to be self-aware and live a authentic life, takes responsibility of decision, to find their own meaning and truth, to help examine roots of some of their anxieties and learn how to better cope with them, to believe, to experience life, and to live more fully in each moment. That is the goal of this existential theorist. Then Gestalt theory, as you must have studied about Gestalts in your perception, sensation, attention chapter. So the Gestalt is a German meaning that means whole. Kohler, Kafka, Wertheimer, these are the Gestalt psychologists, and they have also given a view about how to deal with the behavioral mental issues. So according to them, the counselor must pay attention to the client's awareness, the client's body language, the non-verbal language, inconsistency between the verbal non-verbal messages. The counselor must create an atmosphere that promote growth. The counselor is exciting, energetic, fully human personality. The main goal is to increase the client's awareness of what is. That's why these three theories are grouped together, as they believe in goodness of human being, as they believe that the goal of counseling is to create self-awareness. These theories are grouped together. So the major principle of this theory is holism, interested in the whole person, emphasis on integration of thought, feeling, behavior, and body dreams. Techniques are exercise and experiment. Another one is rational emotive therapy, that was developed by rational Albert Beck and Alice. Albert Alice, he developed this cognitive behavior or rational emotive theory of psychology. So this technology assumes that cognition, emotion, behavior interact and have a reciprocal cause and effect relationship. Even in this chapter, we have also this. This is behavioral theory. ସବୁଠୁ ଇଣ୍ଟରେଷ୍ଟିଂ ପିଲେ ହେଉଛି behavioral theory. ଏଟା ଏଇଥିରେ ଏତେ ସମୟ ପଡ଼ିଗଲାଣି ଯେ this one cognitive behavior therapy, Albert Beck and Alice ଏମାନେ କରିଥିଲେ this theory cognitive behavior therapy. Albert Alice ଆଉ ଆର ଜଣକ ହଉଛନ୍ତି ଆରନ୍ ବେକ୍, ଏଇ ଦି ଜଣ ଏଇ ଥିଓରିକୁ ଡେଭଲପ କରିଥିଲେ cognitive and behavioral therapy. This one has come first, but we should know rational emotive କହିକି ୟାକୁ ଆଗ ଦେଇ ଦିଆଯାଇଛି, but we should know the behavioral theory first, then we can go to this here. सो आमे जो मालाडाप्टिव बिहेवियर के जहाँ जो होची पिले बिहेवियरल इश्यू, कॉन्फ्लिक्ट, इंटरपर्सनल प्रॉब्लम जहाँ भी बा मेंटल डिसऑर्डर सेडा काहे की होची एते सब जो आमे पढिले ता भितर तमे कोन बोली कहि कि भाबुछ काहे की ए सब होची कोन कोन थ्योरी पढिला ताको कोन कोन बोली कहि कि कोह टिके किए कोन कहउचंती बोली कहि कि किसी भूल ठीक किसी नहीं जहाँ भी कहब आई विल शो अनकंडीशनल पॉजिटिव रिगार्ड. बी गायत्री.
मैम साइकोएनालिटिकल थ्योरी.
हाँ वंदना सुनी पारलिनी मु. मनीषा राणी. कौन कौन सब पढ़िले आमे कौन कौन थ्योरीज पढ़िले रे. मधुस्मिता.
यस मैम.
कुह टिके कौन पढ़िले निजे तमाने जदी कहबो मते खुशी लागिवो, बट यू आर नॉट रेस्पोंडिंग, दैट्स व्हाई आई एम कॉलिंग योर नेम.
साइकोएनालिसिस, साइकोडायनामिक,
साइकोएनालिसिस, साइकोडायनामिक,
डिफेंस मैकेनिज्म, डिफेंस मैकेनिज्म,
सुनी पारुनी
मैम डिफेंस मैकेनिज्म,
डिफेंस मैकेनिज्म तो साइकोएनालिसिस भीतर आसिला.
साइकोडायनामिक,
आउ अन्य माने कुह टिके कोन पढ़िले.
मैम मे आई. Ma'am, we studied about psychodynamic, psychoanalytic schools of thought. Then we learned about humanitarian school of thoughts. Uh, Humanitarian was about psychoanalysis was about all the repressed, unconscious, about the vast reservoir, the unconscious, which plays an important role as to form the kind of personality we have, as stated by Sigmund Freud. And then we have humanitarian group of school of thought, according to which uh, it all talked about it was about ki we all have a, we have this drive to reach for actualization, self actualization, and there is always a positive side to us, and we can reach for it, we can go for it without help of any other being. Like we all have that capacity. And then we learned about Viktor Frankl, uh, which was about that. Which then we did you talk about logotherapy? I don't know, but that's all I think.
That's all. Yes, we discussed psychotherapy, psychoanalysis, psychotherapy, and what is psychoanalysis, Freud's contribution towards psychoanalysis, what are the theories that is been given by Freud under this psychoanalysis, and what is the basic premise of psychoanalysis. The basic premise or the theory believes that our behavior is being guided by the unconscious mind. What is unconscious mind? Unconscious mind is an accumulation of our repressed desire. What are those repressed desire? ଆମର ଅନକନସିୟସ୍ ମାଇଣ୍ଡ ହିଁ ଆମ ବ୍ୟବହାରକୁ ଗାଇଡ଼ କରୁଛି। ଆମର ଅନକନସିୟସ୍ ମାଇଣ୍ଡ କ'ଣ? ଏଇଟା ହେଉଛି ଆମର ଅନକନସିୟସ୍ ଡିଜାୟାର ଗୁଡ଼ାକ ଯାଇକି ଆମର ଅନକନସିୟସ୍ ମାଇଣ୍ଡରେ ରହିଛି। କିଏ ସବୁ ଅନକନସିୟସ୍ ଡିଜାୟାର? ସେଗୁଡ଼ାକ ହେଉଛି ଆମର ଇନଫାଣ୍ଟାଇଲ୍ desires, our childhood experiences, guilts, frustrations, conflict, those which we could not face in our childhood or in early stages of development। ସେ ସବୁ ଯାଇକି ସେଗୁଡ଼ାକ ଯାଉନି, we simply repress them, we simply suppress them to our unconscious। କେତେବେଳେ ଆମେ motivated intentionally we are putting them into the unconscious, କେତେବେଳେ unintentionally ବି ସେଗୁଡ଼ାକ ପଳେଇ ଯାଉଛି, because that creates anxiety। ସେଥିପାଇଁ ଆମର ଡିଫେନ୍ସ ମେକାନିଜମ ଅଛି, ଆମେ ତାକୁ ନେଇକି ଠେଲିକି ସେ ଭିତରେ ରଖି ଦଉଛନ୍ତି। ତ ଫ୍ରଏଡ୍ ଆମକୁ ଯୋଉ ଷ୍ଟ୍ରକ୍ଚର ଅଫ ମାଇଣ୍ଡରେ ଏଇ ତିନିଟା ବିଷୟରେ କହିଲେ, ତା ଛଡ଼ା ଆମର ଷ୍ଟ୍ରକ୍ଚର ଅଫ ପର୍ସନାଲିଟିରେ ଇଡିଗୋ ସୁପର ଇଗୋ ବିଷୟରେ କହିଲେ, ଷ୍ଟ୍ରକ୍ଚର ଅଫ ମାଇଣ୍ଡରେ କନସିୟସ୍ ଅନକନସିୟସ୍, କନସିୟସ୍ ସବକନସିୟସ୍, ଅନକନସିୟସ୍ ବିଷୟରେ କହିଲେ। ତା ଛଡ଼ା ଡିଫେନ୍ସ ମେକାନିଜମ କେମିତି ହେଲ୍ପସ୍ ଅସ୍ ଟୁ ଡିଲ୍ ୱିଥ୍ ଅଲ୍ ଦୋଜ୍ ଥିଙ୍ଗସ୍। ତା ଛଡ଼ା ଫ୍ରଏଡ୍ କ'ଣ ସବୁ ଥେରାପ୍ୟୁଟିକ୍ ଟେକ୍ନିକ୍ସ କହିଥିଲେ ସେଇଟା ବି ଆମେ ପଢ଼ିଲେ। ତ ଫେନ୍ the unconscious mind becomes loaded with all those unresolved things that gets reflected, that gets expressed in the form of mental disorder ବୋଲି କହିକି ଫ୍ରଏଡ୍ କହିଲେ। କିନ୍ତୁ ଆମେ ଯେଉଁ ସେଇଥିପାଇଁ କି different techniques को use କରାଯାଉଛି, free association, dream analysis, the resistance and interpretation of resistance, transference, counter transference, ଏଇ ସବୁ ଟେକ୍ନିକ୍ ଗୁଡ଼ା ବି ୟୁଜ୍ କରାଯାଉଛି। ଇଏ ଗଲା ଫ୍ରଏଡ୍ଙ୍କର ସାଇକୋ ଆନାଲିସିସ୍, ସାଇକୋଡାଇନାମିକ୍ସ, ଆଲ୍ଡରିଆନ୍ ଆପ୍ରୋଚ୍, ଏମାନେ ସବୁ ଏଇଗୁଡ଼ା ବିଷୟରେ ଡିସ୍କସ୍ କଲେ। ଯେତେବେଳେ କି another thing we discuss, that is our କ'ଣ ପିଲେ ସେଟାକୁ ଆମେ ଆର ପୋର୍ସନଟାକୁ ଡିସ୍କସ୍ କଲେ, that is human center, person center, existential and କ'ଣ gestalt approach, ଯୋଉଟା କି that believes on the goodness of the individual, that believes in the positive aspect of individual। ଆଉ ସେଇଠି କହୁଛି, ଏଇ theories ଗୁଡ଼ାକ କହୁଛି people or men are essentially good। ସେମାନେ there is no such thing as mental disorder or any type of abnormality in behavior, but there is a distance between reality and our interpretation. For that, we need to get self actualized. We should develop our self awareness to understand, to get insight into what is actually going within us. ସେଇଥିପାଇଁ କି ସେମାନେ different techniques ଗୁଡାକ କହିଲେ. So the goal here is not to deal with our mental issues, not to deal with the unresolved unconscious. Rather, the goal is to help the person, help the client to be self aware, to get strengthened, to take his own decision, to think rationally, to think in a decisive way, take his own decision, to make the client more powerful. ଆଉ ଆମେ ଏଇ ଯୋଉ ସେକେଣ୍ଡ ଆପ୍ରୋଚଟାକୁ basically use karuchanti, but at the same time we are also using some of the techniques of psychotherapy, jemti transference, counter transference, free association. Though we are not exactly using free association, we are encouraging the client to freely tell about his or her pain, the agony, the suppressed thing, so that from there we can get the key point and help the client resolve that. Jadio we are not exactly following the psychoanalytic approach, but most of the technique used by the present day counselor has been taken from this psychoanalytic school. ତ ଏଇଟା ହେଲା ଆମେ ଏତିକି ପଢିଛନ୍ତି। ତାପରେ ଆମେ କାଲି ଟିକେ ପଢିବା ଏ ଯୋଉ ବିହେଭିୟରାଲ ଯୋଉଟା ଅଛି ଆଉ ବିହେଭିୟରାଲ थेरापिस्ट गुड़ाक बिहेवियर थेरापी विषय भी पढ़ा सेतबेलू एटा जो आरईटी बा आरईबीटी, आरईटी रेशनल इमोटिव थेरापी, रेशनल इमोटिव बिहेवियर थेरापी विषय भी काल पढ़ा एंड डिफरेंट टाइप्स ऑफ काउंसलिंग विषय पढ़ा। व्हाट इज एजुकेशनल काउंसलिंग, व्हाट इज वोकेशनल काउंसलिंग, व्हाट इज एचआईवी एड्स काउंसलिंग, व्हाट इज disability counseling. All these things we will be discussing tomorrow. So I think I should stop now. तमाने जदि किए पढ़ी के आसीथिबो ताहले आउ टिके भलो हबो। काली कहिथिली किंतु I feel nobody has gone through the study material जेमिति starting रो आसीथिलो सेमिति ही आसीचो, but it would be better if you go through the study material a bit. Half an hour बाहर करो, टिके आखि पकई दियो स्टडी मटेरियल रे कोन अछि बोली कहिबी. That will be beneficial for you all and for me also. आउ टिके टिके आगो को बढ़िया ପାଇଁ କି सुविधा हबो. ठीक अछि. अच्छा काली विक्टर फ्रैंकल को कथा टिके देखि के आस्थिबो कोन बोली कहि कि सेटा को हमें भी कथा हबा. ठीक अछि. So I am leaving now.
Thank you, madam.